Okay, welcome back everyone to Effing with the Ineffable. I'm Zoe,
And I'm Smokey P.
aka Will. And yeah, today we are kind of freeform
Can you
jazz
can
jam.
you see my tomato sprouts up there by
Oh
the
yeah, I can. By the
yeah,
red
they're
water bottle.
starting to sprout. They're getting
Nice.
getting ready.
All the people I follow on Instagram are planting their sprouts too. We,
Beautiful day here today. I don't know what it's like
the
there.
weather here has been absolutely gorgeous the last week. It's been annoying because myself and my youngest daughter have been sick all week, so we got to enjoy it a little bit, but we haven't really been enjoying this nice weather. But it's been like in the 70s like every day.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy. And even this next week it's supposed to be like, you know, upper
Pretty nice.
40s in the 50s.
Considering it's not even officially spring yet.
Yeah, I'm
You
liking the
started
spring.
you started your St. Joseph Novena the other day.
Yeah,
I
I
saw
did.
that.
Yeah, St. Joseph, his feast day is a week from today, so I started the novena to him. um yeah, I like spring a lot more now that I live like here rather than in the Midwest. Like where we grew up in the Midwest, I feel like,
Spring didn't really start for another month or a month and a half.
and spring isn't like that nice. It's like spring is when all the snow melts, but it's not really like when there's actually nice weather. It's just like everything's still brown and gross, but all the snow's melting, and then like summer finally comes. Here it's like there's legit spring. Like we went on a nature walk. We saw like crocuses and snowdrop flowers and like,
Like little purple crocuses.
yeah, like,
Aren't
and
they beautiful?
so pretty, and it's like stuff's just popping up everywhere. It's crazy.
Remember do you remember the book and the movie The Color Purple?
I know of it, but I never read it.
You've heard it? Well, basically the reference to The Color Purple is um, she, she talks about what do we owe to God? Every time we see the color purple, we ought to say thank you, God.
Mm,
Basically, because the color purple is so beautiful. Like you see
yeah,
the purple flowers and stuff. You should have this gratitude in your heart.
I
uh
like that.
yeah, it's a good book and a pretty good movie.
Because
Wow, I
of
am
my
really getting bald. Holy moly.
another of my favorite flowers is lilacs, which are purple too.
Yeah,
So lilacs are the best.
one of my favorite. I like the lilac smell, and I
Mhm.
love the lily of the valley smell.
Yeah, we used to have both of those at our old house. I miss
Yeah,
those.
I have some lilacs that I planted here.
Someday I'll have
They-
a garden and I'll be able to have all kinds of beautiful things.
yeah,
Right now, I just have beautiful kids.
yeah. Well, and that counts for something.
Yeah, so our week was pretty much consumed with being sick. Oh, I'm getting really into it's weird how this podcast can like change things. We talked about eating meat and the ethics of eating meat and stuff. And then a few days after that, I had like a really long conversation with two friends about eating meat and just about like some health things. And I was talking to them about certain things, and I was like, I think that I need to start maybe eating some more meat in my family, because just we have a couple of health issues that I think could be helped
And
by
you
that.
immediately got sick.
No, we got sick before I started eating meat, but um funnily enough, my daughter like completely healed during the night after the first time that I made meat for my family yesterday. I think that's a coincidence, but you can decide for yourself. But I did get this book called Nourishing Traditions. It's all based on do you know anything about Weston Price? Weston Price was this dentist who lived in the very early 1900s. And he traveled the world going to all these kind of like indigenous populations and was studying the way that their diets and their teeth and their health, like just kind of their health in general and their mental health. And he was viewing like kind of the similarities between indigenous populations and how they ate. And then he would compare, like, he took tons of pictures. So he would compare like their palates and their teeth to like the same population, but people who were eating like westernized diets. And it was just like totally different. So anyway, it's a lot about eating bone broths and meat, like especially fatty cuts of meat and animal fat and organ meats and that kind of stuff. And like the nice thing about it is it's not really restrictive at all. You can pretty much eat anything. It's just that when you learn about how indigenous people prepared grains, like they did it very differently from the way they do it. They don't have like, they never would have like white bleached all-purpose flour, you know. They would have the whole grains that they would grind and make into stuff.
Right.
So it's just a lot about like making sourdoughs, making kimchi and kombucha, and like fermented foods is another big thing. So anyway, I'm really liking this book, and I'm getting really into all the research of it and stuff. So it's been
Cool.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to read you one part of it because I thought it was so funny. It's about this book was written in 1995 by Sally Fallon, who created the Weston Price, what's it called? Weston Price Foundation, something like that. Anyway, so she kind of took the work that Weston Price did in the early 1900s and then was kind of popularizing it, I guess. So I'm going to read you this one. She talks about how technology is both a good and a bad thing. It's helped us to, like, you know, in a lot of ways, it's helped us live free, more healthy lives. Like, I gave my daughter Tylenol yesterday because she had a bad fever. They didn't have Tylenol, you know, hundreds of years ago. Like, there are a lot of good things about technology, but technology is also...
They had willow bark.
Yeah, but technology can also be a bad thing. So I just thought this paragraph was really funny, and it also had to do with a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this show, coincidentally. So, technology can be a kind father, but only in partnership with his mothering feminine partner, the nourishing traditions of our ancestors. These traditions require us to apply more wisdom to the way we produce and process our food, and yes, more time in the kitchen, but they give highly satisfying results. Delicious meals, increased vitality, robust children, and freedom from the chains of acute and chronic illness. The wise and loving marriage of modern invention with the sustaining, nurturing food folkways of our ancestors is the partnership that will transform the 21st century into the golden age. Divorce hastens the physical degeneration of the human race, cheats mankind of his limitless potential, destroys his will, and condemns him to the role of under-citizen in a totalitarian world order.
Oh my gosh.
I thought that was so, like, I read that to my husband. He's like, what book are you reading?
How did she get there from a nutritional thing? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you think about it. Like, think about, she talks a lot in the intro to this book about how so much of our food science and stuff that's recommended by all these governmental agencies is super corrupt. It's all just influenced by the mind. Like, they talk
Lobbyists.
about how, yeah, like
different lobbyists, yeah.
And even just like universities who study nutrition, they then get grants from these, like, you know,
the American Butter Foundation.
Yeah. Well,
I wonder what they'll find out about butter.
Exactly. It's like
it's
she has
really good for you. It's a superfood.
Well, she would say it is a superfood, but sugar is like their big enemy, and they would say that like all these places, you know, condemn sugar, and then they get all these grants from corporations, and suddenly like corn syrup is great for you. So anyway, I don't know. It's a good book. I like it. I would recommend it so far. I made spaghetti sauce from it last night, adapted because I didn't have chicken livers, so I couldn't make it exactly the way they wanted me to make it. But...
Well, someday
Anyway.
we'll have to have a farm and have some chickens, and we'll just
I know.
go grab a liver out of a chicken whenever we need one.
Yeah.
Actually, you can buy chicken livers pretty cheap.
I'm sure you.
Most people don't want them.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to get rid of them.
Like gizzards and hearts,
Yeah.
things like that. I love that stuff.
It's really good for you too, as long as you're getting it from like grass-fed, pastured, organic animals, because if you're not, then all they're eating is like pesticides and toxins and genetically modified stuff, and then all those toxins are building up in those organs. So that's kind of the problem, is like if you know your farmers really well, then obviously it's one of the best foods you can eat. But if you're just buying it from Aldi or whatever, it's not really going to be like the high quality stuff that you want. Anyway, that was a long.
Don't diss Aldi. I'm hoping Aldi will be one of our sponsors.
Okay, I almost exclusively shop at Aldi, and I love.
Me too.
They have grass-fed organic beef, and they have pasture, cage-free raised chickens. That's where I'm buying all my meat, because it's the only place I can afford it at that quality. I love Aldi, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't buy like their conventional organ meats. I don't even think they sell them.
Let's diss Tyson instead.
Okay, yeah. Don't buy
Tyson.
Tyson.
Factory farmers. Anyway, yeah. So
how was your week?
It's a good week. I did get to do a little bit of work on Tuesday. But other than that, we didn't really meet with the guys this week. I have no idea. I guess just because they're still trying to roll out all these vaccines and get all this stuff going, and so they're still kind of in a semi-quarantine state of mind. And they also had some big inspections and stuff. So hopefully we'll get to do a little bit more.
At least
you got a little bit more actual work next week.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my time just kind of looking at different things and
looking at houses and sending me links. Looking
at houses. See if we can convince Grandma to buy us a family estate.
A homestead property.
Yeah. Some of those are pretty substantial.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Hopefully it'll work out.
No, it's not going to work out.
Well, one of the places that my husband is...
Grandma says she doesn't want any more property.
Yeah.
She says the only property I have is the house up north, and that's all I want.
We'll have to make this podcast profitable enough that we can buy it ourselves.
Or we can if we get a little bit of money ahead, we can pool our money and buy a place over near the Smokies or something.
And then we'll raise chickens, free range organic chickens, and sell their eggs. You can make a lot of money doing that. I know, because now I'm buying them on the other end. So yeah, did you do anything else interesting this week? I know you bought a new car.
I did. I sold 2 cars and I bought a new car.
You were just a car dealership.
Yeah. So that's what I did. I got a Durango. Love the Durango.
Durango is basically...
You used to drive the Durango. You loved it too when you had it.
Yeah, it was basically my first car. It wasn't really my car, but my family had an old Durango that I would use. And I did like that car. It was nice. It had a lot of... It was just like... It's a car I would like now, because now I need the space. Back then, it was... It's got seating for 7.
Yeah. It also has... with the seats folded down, it basically has as much cargo room as a regular like van.
Yeah.
It's got 4-wheel drive. It's just an awesome combination vehicle.
Yeah.
There's some things that it can't do that trucks can do, but there's some things that it can do that trucks certainly can't, like
Yeah.
seat 7 and
Yeah.
have the cargo completely encased.
Yeah. You can
You know,
decide if you want to be hauling cargo or people, which is kind of nice to have that decision.
and you can use it as like a camper.
Yeah.
It's big enough that the back could be almost like a camper.
See, now you're convincing me I need a Durango, because at the time when I was in high school, what I really needed was something small and gas efficient, because I would be driving all over the place all the time and it was expensive. And I didn't really need that much room because I would take my friends with me, but there was never really more than I can't really remember a time when there was more than 5 of us in the car, and so I could just use a small car. But now we have a very small car, my family, and if we have another baby, which we're hoping to do eventually, one of these 9-month periods from now, we're gonna have to get a bigger car, because I don't know if we're gonna be able to fit 3 car seats in the back. So anyway, all that to say, congrats on the new Durango. New old Durango, since it's what, 2004?
At this point, I don't know why, but trucks are super overvalued. You remember I bought that truck from
Yes, a person
my oldest son's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Mom. I actually sold it for more than I bought it for.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So I actually made some money. But I used it for a couple of years, and put a few thousand miles on it, and sold it for more than I had paid for it, because trucks are so expensive. I was talking with the guy who was selling the Durango. He had a couple of trucks for sale too, and he said, these trucks have 200,000 miles on them and blah blah blah, and I can sell them for this much. You can buy Durangos cheap. For whatever reason, people want trucks.
Is it because they're not making as many trucks now? And so
I guess because of the COVID for a while, that I think a lot of the lines were shut down and stuff, so that there's a smaller supply.
Yeah.
Also, right now, there's a lot of money out there. I mean, they just
with
this week
checks.
the $1.9 trillion they're throwing out into the economy. Where did they get it? From the future.
Yeah.
They've got a time machine. They went and borrowed it from the future.
From my kid, that's not born yet. That's not conceived yet.
Right.
That's who they're stealing it from.
Well, and they're hoping that with inflation, pretty soon 1.9 trillion won't seem like much. It'll be 1.9 trillion. That's 2 days interest on the national debt now. We can pay that off in no time.
Sometimes I fantasize about becoming president. I don't really want to become president, but sometimes I fantasize about it, and I just think, man, it would be so cool to get in there and just slash everything to the bone and just be like, okay, EPA, you're gone.
We're really draining the swamp.
Yeah, we're not just
talking.
We're not doing Social Security anymore. We're not doing welfare anymore. We're just done. We can't afford it. Those are things that we can do if we afford them. We can't afford it.
We're cutting everything back. We're having a garage sale for all the government property. Private places can get in on it.
Air Force One for sale on Craigslist. For real though, I would love that, but it's never gonna happen. Even if I wanted it to happen, it would never happen. So it's just a daydream.
Never say never. Who knows? After the revolution, who knows what'll happen?
Then again, when everyone else dies because of their weird mutations from taking the COVID vaccine, I'm going to be one of the only healthy individuals left. So I'll be one of the only qualified people. Oh, Lord. I hope that doesn't
when the idiocracy takes over?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right.
I love that movie. Anyway, Do we want to talk about progressivism?
Yeah. What should we say about it?
Well, you were the one who sent me the topic suggestion, which was basically progressivism or progressives and what kind of the aim of progressivism, if I'm remembering correctly.
What do progressives want from us? That was the article that I sent.
So
what was the bottom line? I can't remember now.
Well,
that was a long time ago.
Here's the bad news for you. I didn't read the first two articles you sent me. But we can talk about how about we start off first by let's define our terms. When you're talking about progressivism, let's talk about progressivism versus liberalism versus conservatism, all those things.
See, now when I think about progressive, I'm thinking it's people who consider that there is a evolutionary process that goes on as far as governments, as far as culture, things like that. And
Okay.
they've got this idea about what where that evolution should go.
So basically kind of like a utopian end state that we're moving toward.
Right. That they would see, where there's, obviously things like racism is completely eliminated,
Poverty.
as evidenced by complete equity.
Yeah.
What do they call it when you the representation when you take a picture of a corporate board and it's all white guys,
like perfectly diverse, perfectly
right.
like perfect racial equity in terms of like every single race is perfectly equally has a say in things, is in positions of power. There's no more poverty, no more even disparity of income. Everybody's making exactly the same. Stuff that obviously is not only not desirable if you actually think about it for 2 seconds, but just not realistic. Like
why would you say it's not desirable?
So like
why is that not an ideal in your mindset?
Well, because it completely negates the fact of like human freedom. Like, let's say that I choose to stay home and raise my children. I'm not choosing to go out and work in the workforce.
Why should that be any less valuable than somebody who goes and works in a coal mine?
Valuable monetarily or valuable to society? Yes. Valuable to me?
All of it.
Well, it is more valuable to me, and that's why I stay home. So does that mean that I'm placing more value on it? So now I guess it's like, whose standards are we holding everybody to? And once again, it's something that like Jordan Peterson has talked about before, where he's like, what, do we need perfect diversity and equity across every single breakdown and categorization of people? Because where do we stop? Do we say, okay, you need perfect diversity among every single race represented on Earth. You need perfect diversity among every single age category. Do we need perfect diversity based on your physical ability or disability? Do we need perfect diversity based on mental ability and disability? Do we need perfect diversity based on patterns of thought like neuroticism versus, like all the different personality traits?
All those different traits that we talked about the other week.
Yeah, do we need perfect diversity among religions? Do we need perfect diversity among, like, there's infinite ways to categorize people and to take away their actual identity and to just place a group categorization on them. And I don't think that those things matter. Like, I don't think it matters that I'm white and my neighbor is black. Like, that doesn't matter to me. I know that that's not a PC thing to say anymore, that I have to be, you know, like, I have to promote people of color, or I'm not being sufficiently anti-racist. But I think that that's racist. I think that, like, obviously that is racist, because it's saying that somebody's value is based on the color of their skin. Like, that's literally the whole point of, like, what we're trying to fight against. As
Right.
civilized humane.
Ironically, the solution becomes just an amplification of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
so what you're saying is, wouldn't it be, what I'm saying is, in a perfect world where everybody is emotionally, intellectually, physically capable of everything, wouldn't it be great if we all had access to everything? Yeah. It would. And we do have access to things, but we have access to things based only on our ability to manage those. When I was hired for my job, they didn't ask, "Are you a balding middle-aged white dude?" Because that's what we're looking for here. They asked, "Are you a social worker with experience in treating people with substance use disorders?" And it's like, yeah, oh, okay, that's what we're looking for. You know,
yeah.
So if you want to be a substance use disorder counselor, you got to develop those skills. You got to have the ability to manage that. You have to have the ability to accept direction and authority.
It's not just about ability, though. It's about your choices. I could have gone to school for social work if I wanted to, and worked in a job and got experience doing social work. I chose not to do that.
I don't think you're cut out for it.
Maybe I'm not, but that's against the point. The point is, it's like people, oh my God, this has been talked to death, but it's true. Like, people always talk about the gender pay gap between men and women. It's like, maybe that exists for a reason. Maybe the reason is that most women, as they get older, decide that they don't want to devote their entire life to work. They want to have a family life balance, whereas men more often are more have more of a mind to concentrate on work. That is obviously not the case every time. I'm not saying it's true of every single man and every single woman, but in general, there are general characteristics that are true about men and general characteristics that are true about women. And a lot of women don't want to work 100-hour work week at a law firm, whereas some men, Jordan Peterson has talked about this to death, but some men have the drive to do that, and they will do it. And that's okay. It's okay that men and women don't necessarily want to work the same positions.
They should have that freedom to do that.
Yes, of course.
And they should, whatever the market bears, they should be paid for that.
Yeah.
However, to artificially manipulate the market and say, okay, we're going to be paying everybody the same amount for whatever work, whether they're, screwing a thing onto a cup, or whether they're, developing the COVID vaccine. Yeah. They're gonna be paid the same no matter what. It's absurd.
It's absurd because it just misunderstands like what money is, where money comes from, what the what the purpose of the economy is, like
what constitutes value.
Because like money is a paper that we exchange for goods and services. So that when we create goods and services, somebody gives us money and we give them the good or service. Like, I feel like this is literally like kindergarten level stuff, but like people actually don't understand this, including the Federal Reserve, who just prints money like it's their job, because it is their job. Like,
is it their job?
I mean, the Federal Reserve is a scam.
What's officially their function?
I would have to maybe to regulate the production of currency in the US. Do you want me to Google it?
To regulate, not just to print willy-nilly, right? I mean, isn't there supposed to be some rhyme and reason?
I mean, you would hope. Let's see. This says the Federal Reserve System is the central bank of the U.S. It conducts monetary policy to manage inflation, maximize employment, and stabilize interest rates. The Fed supervises the nation's largest banks and provides financial services to the U.S. government. It also promotes the stability of the financial system. All of that to say, it's useless and shouldn't exist.
It manipulates the market.
Yes, it puts its fingers in the market and messes it up so that the true free exchange of goods and services cannot happen. That's a problem.
Yeah.
The whole point of this being, when I create goods and services that somebody deems of value, they can pay me for those goods and services, and we will have an exchange. It used to be that we would barter everything, right? Like I would create a homeschool curriculum and somebody else would make kimchi and we would exchange those things. Now I make those things and we exchange it for money because it's easier to carry around and it's easier to trade across people.
Currency is really handy. However, currency is supposed to have some sort of basis in a value.
Yeah.
Right now, it's baseless. They're just printing money that for values that don't exist. I mean, this year, supposedly the shortfall in the GDP was going to be like $400 billion or something. They just passed this $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. That's 4 times the amount that we were going to be short on the GDP. They already spent all the money for this year. Plus, we've been in debt for years and years. Yeah. Clearly, there's no actual value to this money. These debts are never going to be paid off.
Yeah.
The United States is really a zombie government. You've heard that term, right? Zombie corporations,
like that don't actually produce anything.
Corporations that are they're failing. They can barely get enough money. They keep getting loans from one place or another to pay off the interest on the loans that they already have, and they just compound more and more.
So this is interesting because it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but like obviously what we used to have was actual
gold standard.
Yeah. So if you look on number 2, it's really hard to see, but it says
it's a silver certificate.
It actually says like under the $1, it actually says that like it corresponds to $1 worth of actual like precious metals or material or whatever it was that we would use to represent that. Now we're here on
it used to be silver. I still have some of those silver certificates. They won't redeem those anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still worth $1, whatever a dollar is worth.
But it's not worth.
They won't give you any silver or gold for it.
Yeah. Now we're in number 3 where it doesn't correspond to anything. And this is exactly the problem, is like what we're talking about just printing money. That's when you get the $50 trillion in Zimbabwe. Like, that's not a joke. That's a real banknote, because that's.
Show on your screen the inflation when they people in Germany after World War I. The people who had the wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it. I'm sure it will be here.
The hyperinflation.
Children playing with stacks of money.
Yeah.
Because
just piles of money.
Germans use money as kindling.
Yeah.
Because it's just not worth anything. Like, let's see.
Right. Yeah. The hyperinflation. What was that graph?
German marks needed to buy 1 ounce of gold. So in 1919, it was 170. On November 30th of 1923, it was what, $87 trillion?
4 years later.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what's going to happen to us if we don't pay attention and don't care.
And what did that set up? It tells you right next to it, a bad economy coupled with an incompetent government was one of the reasons that Hitler was able to take over. People are terrified of fascism, and yet they're setting it up. They're setting up the basis for somebody to have to come in and say, this is over.
And be the savior and be like, I have the answers. Let me tell them to you.
And he did have the answer. He turned Germany into this incredibly powerful economic and political force. He was nuts, and he had all these eugenic things.
Yeah, he didn't care about actually respecting the rights of his actual citizens, only some of his citizens. And that's usually, it's pretty easy to make a lot of money if you just completely steal from one person. It's like in Hamilton, they talk about, the South was super prosperous at the time, and the South didn't want to bear the brunt of the cost. Like when they were talking about making the one United States federal bank in the beginning, the South, first of all, didn't have a lot of the damage from the war because most of the war was fought more in the North. But also, they were super prosperous because they were just enslaving people and making them work. Now, slavery is actually not that good of an economic, like if you actually look at the way that we did chattel slavery in the US, it's not really that economically viable. Not that that should matter regardless, like obviously it's evil no matter what, but it wasn't that economically viable anyway. But the point being, it is much easier to make money if you just enslave someone rather than having to pay them a fair living wage or whatever they want to say, or even just the market value of their work.
Is it a fair living wage a form of slavery?
I mean, when you're making everybody pay a minimum of $15 for screwing a screw into a cup, when that actually isn't worth $15, it's worth nothing. Because why would I want you to screw a screw into your coffee cup anyway? It's only worth what somebody will pay for it in a free system, right?
In a progressive system, every cup will have 3 screws. Because that's the ideal.
So obviously equity is just is a bad idea. Like, once again, am I not going to be allowed to stay home and work because some women are going into the workforce? So is it like every single woman either has to stay home or has to go out and make money so that I can be paid by society? Like, what is that actually going to look like? I made this choice
because in the progressive ideal, there is one ideal.
Exactly. And it's not your ideal.
And that will be the standard, and everybody will be held to it.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be idiocracy, and maybe it'll be the great leap forward. Who knows?
Yeah. What I do know is that, like, it bothers me.
You understand when I say great leap forward.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic.
No, I know.
The great leap forward was probably the worst, the most atrocious governmental program ever, and led to like 50 million dead.
Yeah, responsible for millions and millions of, because everybody had to make steel in their backyard.
Right.
Because we have to be equitable. Like, but then everybody starves because nobody's making food and everybody's making steel in their backyard.
Right.
Of course,
Right.
like, yes.
And nobody's saving up grain for next year's crops, because we have to provide all this grain as part of the quota this year. And so if we don't, instead of planting grain, they would provide it to the government, who would then eat it, and then they have nothing to plant for next year.
Yeah, and we learned in very early on in Exodus, we learned why that's a bad idea, because you have 7 years of good planting.
7 years of fat cows being swallowed by 7 skinny cows.
Yeah, and then everyone has to go to Egypt, and then the whole world becomes subject to Egypt because they're all hungry. And then you get a totalitarian world order where they make you into slaves.
Right.
It's like, this is biblical, people. Come on. Like, we need to learn these lessons so that we don't repeat them.
Right.
Anyway,
but everybody would say, that was then, this is now. No, human nature, the nature of governments, the nature of power is exactly the same now as it was then. And things will end up in a very analogous way, with some minor deviations due to modern technology and information systems and blah, 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 but we are on the road to serfdom again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna
Here
say,
it comes.
My friends, talk a lot about, they criticize, like, oh, the American dream as being like, everybody has the same, like, what I think the actual American dream was in the original, like, conception of it was like, you can make the world for yourself that you want, not constrained by governmental push down, not constrained by saying you can't practice what religion you want, you can't do what job you want, you can't live the way that you want. Like, the actual American dream is like, everybody can have their own utopia at the end of the road for them. Everybody can figure out how to,
without having a homeowners association to answer to.
Exactly. Like, everybody can have their own conception of the ideal life and work toward it. And that is what the actual American dream is. Now, then everybody kind of became consumed by materialism, as everybody always does, and thought, like, okay, it has to be like a big house and multiple cars and all this stuff, like lots of things to play with.
Perfectly trimmed lawn and no crabgrass.
It's the same thing. It's like, what's the American dream now? It's like, I have all these accounts that I follow on Instagram that are like funny accounts, and they all say like all the Biden promises all the bombs that he bombs Syria with will be made, will come from Black-owned businesses. It's like, it just makes me mad. It's like, we have these weird conceptions of, like, the ideal, like, everything has to be perfectly equitable, even though that just completely negates human freedom. Like, when I have to conform to your utopia, that takes away my freedom to decide what I want. Because guess what? My ideal world is like living on some land where I can be self-sufficient and having some chickens and having a goat and, like, drinking raw milk, which is, like, illegal in most states, and, like, raising my own vegetables and flowers and just, like, living my life and doing my thing. Whereas lots of other people, their American dream is to, like, go to California and make it big in acting and be famous and whatever, which is, like, I think that's vapid and stupid, but if you want to do that, you should be free to do so. But I don't have to do it. Like, everybody can have different ideals, and that's okay.
The American dream is everybody has their own dream.
Yeah. I thought that there was a really good part in this book about kind of the progressive mindset versus the conservative mindset, and I was wondering if I could read it here.
Okay.
I just think that this gives a good picture of it. Let me see here. Talk for just a second while I find this. Okay, well, I think this is it. Let's see. Okay, this is called Social Institutions Are Necessary but Insufficient. Sanity is knowing the rules of the social game, internalizing them and following them. Differences in status are therefore inevitable, as all worthwhile endeavors have a goal, and those who pursue them have different abilities in relationship to that goal. That's kind of what you were saying at the beginning. Accepting the fact of this disequilibrium and striving forward nonetheless, whether presently at the bottom, middle, or top, is an important element of mental health. But a paradox remains. The solutions of yesterday and today, upon which our current hierarchies depend, will not necessarily serve as solutions tomorrow. Thoughtless repetition of what sufficed in the past, or worse, authoritarian insistence that all problems have been permanently solved, therefore means the introduction of great danger when changes in the broader world makes local change necessary. Respect for creative transformation must in consequence accompany appropriate regard for the problem-solving hierarchical structures bequeathed to us by the past. That is neither an arbitrary moral opinion nor a morally relative claim. That is something more akin to knowledge of twin natural laws built into the structure of our reality. Highly social creatures such as we are must abide by the rules to remain sane and minimize unnecessary uncertainty, suffering, and strife. However, we must also transform those rules carefully as circumstances change around us. Now, this whole section is really good, and I can
that's exactly a reflection of what you read from that cookbook. That we need to marry the wisdom of traditions that have been hard fought and have been proven by survival.
Yeah.
Indigenous people survived because they were able to develop a diet that met their biological needs.
And
so
there's
a wisdom
to what they actually had. Because guess what? The Eskimos and the Inuits, they have, like we've talked about this before, they ate almost exclusively.
They got seals. They got baby seals.
Yeah, it talks about in the book how they ate almost exclusively animal fat, animal meat, and drank animal blood. Like that was most of what they ate. Now there's indigenous people in the Mediterranean area who would eat a lot of seafood because they had a lot of access to seafood. They would eat a lot of olives and the native plants and whatever. So anyway, the whole point is, I think progressivism is kind of a different thing. Like, people talk about progressivism and liberalism as two different things, or as the same thing, but I really think that they are two different things. Liberalism is the idea that, like, we always need to be changing and adapting to try to find better solutions to problems. Conservatism is the idea that we have a lot of wisdom that is passed on. We have a lot of answers already, and we should hold on to those answers. And Jordan Peterson is making the point.
And the synthesis of those is awesome. Yeah.
And he's making the point in this book as you go on farther. I'm not going to read it all because it's really good and you should read it, but it would just take too long. He's making the point that, like, the problem is a lot of people are temperamentally conservative and other people are temperamentally, he would say creative, but I would say liberal in terms of trying to come up with creative and unique solutions to problems. What really needs to happen is we need to marry the two. Just like in the book, we need to divorce of those two things is how we get a totalitarian world order.
And that's where we're at right now. We're in that setup.
Because it's
we're in that setup where there's two Americas right now, and they never the twain shall meet. There's two very different Americas, two very different American mindsets that exist. 75 million people say Donald Trump is the best thing since sliced bread. 75 million other people say he is a horror. He's the worst. He's Voldemort. I can't speak his name.
Yeah. So I think that, like, I just kind of wanted to make a distinction between progressivism and liberalism, because, like, while I am temperamentally conservative, and I think things like the Constitution are full of wisdom that we should actually take seriously and listen to. The Bible is full of wisdom and contains wisdom that we need to listen to. We ignore that at our peril. As a libertarian, I do see the need for a balance between conservatism and liberalism. I think that those things are really important, and we can't exclude one, because otherwise we do fall into that kind of ideological mindset where we just go down the path to complete totalitarianism.
And I do believe that there is, you know, America is traditionally a melting pot. Not necessarily everything melts. There's places where diversity can be solidified and things can be very different from how they run in other places. That's fine. The problem comes when you start to impose one vision or another on the entire country. Then you're treading on people, you know, in one direction or another. When you go to the extremes, the extremely conservative, the extremely liberal, for lack of a better word, or leftist, the extreme right, the extreme left, they're going to be imposing things that are going to be intolerable to a lot of other people. There's got to be a lot of freedom in the middle, and a lot of toleration to say, hey, you can live your life any way you want to. You want to have an abortion every 2 weeks, go for it. That's your business. If that works for you, you know, it's a big world. To each their own. You know,
I think that's actually physically impossible, but yes.
There's different strokes. And it may be that down the line, that's going to be shown to be the beneficial, optimal lifestyle that is going to live. That's going to live for a long time. It may be that it's not. It may be that traditional, you know, indigenous or Catholic or whatever traditions are going to be actually more beneficial, and that is going to be what is going to last. You know, is going to be sustainable, because it, you know, theoretically honors the natural law more cohesively than these other kinds of lifestyles. Who knows? I don't know. We'll find out. But what we won't find out, how we won't find that out, is if everybody has to do the same thing. Then that biodiversity gets wiped out. And then when things like pandemics or whatever occur, there's no room for things. Everybody is in the same situation, and everybody's going to adapt in exactly the same way. And if it ends up being a failure, as it did in communist China, communist Russia, Cuba, every communistic place always had its problems. Every fascist place always had its problems. Tyrants of one stripe or another are always going to end up having their throats slit and be hung upside down and have people run by and kick them in the head and say, I always hated that guy. You know, and that's going to be either way. It's going to be a left-facing tyrant, a right-facing tyrant, but it's the tyranny that's the problem. The tyranny, the treading on other people, and the unwillingness to respect other people's lifestyles and ways of doing things, and the willingness to take away their freedoms. All this money that's being spent is being spent in my name. I didn't authorize this. I didn't authorize this.
Check.
I didn't sign that check. I don't know who's signing that check. But, Trump signed some checks. I didn't think that was a good idea. Biden signed in some checks. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe they needed to do that because the government interfered with the marketplace so much. Maybe they needed, but now what that's doing is setting the stage for socialism.
Yeah.
Where, they've interfered with the marketplace enough now that the market can't function without that interference. And so now we're all going to have to rely on the government to just keep printing money and giving us things. Which is, it can't last.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie WALL-E?
Yeah, right.
I saw a meme today that was like happy 1 year anniversary of like the 2-week lockdown or whatever, and it was like a picture of the ship on WALL-E where like all the human beings are so fat they can't walk, and they're just going from like they're just, it's basically like a cruise ship. Like they're just kind of like, they go hang out at the pool, they go hang out and like watch movies, and it's like it's all just being
it's basically a cruise ship in one sense. It's also like a matrix in another sense.
It's a prison.
In that they're completely incapable of having an independent life.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear that last thing because my speaker got messed up. But yeah, but yeah, it is like a matrix, especially because you're not allowed to leave. Like you are crippled. Remember, they literally don't know how to walk. They have to relearn how to walk at the end of the movie. It's like, that is powerful symbolism for what is happening now. Like we are being so crippled to the point where we have to rely on the government. It's the only way for us to survive is to get these stimulus checks. But then they get to call the tune. They get to say what we're doing. They get to say, okay, now you are not allowed to homeschool your kids anymore. Now you're not allowed to like have medical freedom and live where you want. Like the beauty.
Now you're not allowed to have religious freedoms.
Yeah.
Did you see that last article that I sent you?
I did read that one, yeah.
Why the state won't tolerate Christianity's moral code?
Yep. Like if you think that the Equality Act is not going to infringe on the free practice of religion, once again, I don't think it's going to pass. I believe it needs 60 votes to pass. The chance of that happening, I don't see as a lot. But anyway.
Who would vote against something called the Equality Act?
It's like
equality is what they're shooting for.
Yeah.
However, what's going to come of it is very different.
Yeah.
You can see that the unintended consequence. I know the intended consequence of this, but the unintended consequence is going to be much more grim. It's going to be much worse.
And I actually think it is intended. It's just not stated. It's the
I intended to warm up the house. I set it on fire.
I think it's the intended unstated goal. I do think that they're trying to undermine religious. And as that article will say, like they are trying to undermine religious freedoms because people like Catholics who believe that we are in this world but not of this world, people who believe that we are not living for earthly fame and glory, we are not living for earthly power and wealth, we are living for a higher purpose, a different world, a world that is yet to come. Like those are the people that are threats to the regime of the totalitarians. Like that is what they need to tamp down, because if you believe that like no matter what happens to me in this world, I can die a martyr and know that I'm going to go and be where I was created to be, then you're not going to listen and follow in line and screw the screws into the cups and just be a good citizen and not fight back on things. And Yeah, that's a big problem. So if you think that this is all good intentions, I would caution you to think twice about that. The Equality Act, I mean.
You know, I I do think it's mainly well intended. I think there's also you know, there's power mongering, and
Yeah.
they talked about the four forces that this guy this sociologist Frank Tannenbaum, society is possessed by a series of irreducible institutions perennial through time that in effect both describe man and define the basic role he plays. These institutions are the state, the church, the family, and the market.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good
Description.
Recognition of what are some of those different forces.
Yeah.
And those institutions have eternally striven against each other to gain dominance and become the primary reference group for its members.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of fear that religious fanatics will try to impose their will on other people. There is also a lot of fear by us religious folks that politically ideological fanatics are going to impose their will on other people.
Yeah.
There is also a tremendous undermining of the family as an institution.
Yeah.
They were talking again yesterday, this stimulus package basically makes the government the child support payer
Yeah.
for every child in America.
Yeah.
Which means if we have somebody who's paying support, we don't need a working parent.
Mm-hmm.
All we need, we don't need a marriage as a foundation. We don't need two parents having to work things out and having to struggle with each other and having to negotiate how the kids are going to be raised. We've got somebody paying the bills, and then another person can just make all those decisions.
And division of labor too, where like my husband and I, we need to actually work together to figure out like what are going to be your duties and what are going to be like my duties and his duties. And it's like people always get like, especially my liberal friends, they get really upset with like they always are like, oh, it's so unfair. Like men have so much, like talking about how in general, especially with breastfeeding women and women who give birth, it's like they do have a majority of the work involved with creating and nourishing children if you choose to breastfeed. Like my husband can't breastfeed our children. Sorry, now they call it chest feeding to be inclusive. But like my husband can't breastfeed our kids. Like I'm the one.
But he could chest feed with a bottle.
I'm the one who gets up in the night and feeds our children. Now he has other duties that I don't do. Like he's the one who always brushes my kids' teeth, which I'm very thankful for because I hate brushing their teeth. He's the one who gives them baths. He's the one who, when he graduates, will go out and make money so that I can go out and buy things. Like that is our division of labor. And like, you know, people don't like these traditional gender roles in terms of like women doing housework and men going to work. But they don't like the imposition of that. And that's true. That shouldn't be imposed. It should be an option. Yes.
It should be an option.
The reason it is traditional gender roles is because naturally there are things that fall more toward a woman or more toward a man, and obviously you can manipulate that any way you want. If you want to completely formula feed your child and have your husband do all of the formula feeding of your children, go right ahead. You are free to do so. That is totally fine.
See how it works.
Once again, there are things that have evolved over time to work, and they last because they do work and they make families who happen to raise children who thrive and go on to create their own families and do that thing.
And what are the characteristics of those thriving families?
Yeah.
They tend to be, they have stable marriages, they have somebody who's working, they have somebody who's kind of tending to the home for the most part.
Yeah.
There's certain qualities of those that you take a look at who are the kids who are living in poverty. It's not kids from two-parent families. It's not kids from families where the parents have put some effort into education and skill building and have developed a career. It's families that are single-parent families, families that are struggling with substance abuse and other things like that, families that have very few job skills, and the main job skill is be available to work, show up.
Yeah.
So many people just don't even show up for work. They don't even go.
Yeah.
They have a job for a day or two, and then it's like, oh, this is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I got to get up in the morning and go do stuff that somebody else tells me to do. Screw that.
It's like
Come
Ben
on,
Shapiro.
Uncle Joe, send me a check.
Yeah. Ben Shapiro always talks about how, like, the statistics say if you don't want to be permanently poor in the US, I think there's like 3 things you have to do, which is have children after you get married, get a high school degree, and then actually hold a job. Like, if you do those 3 things, statistically, you will not be permanently poor in the US, because, like, you can, and I know people who, like,
depending on the definition of poverty.
Yeah,
Poverty in the US right now, the poorest people in the United States right now are richer than 95% of the people who lived 100 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
Do you have a phone? Nobody had a phone.
Yeah,
Do you have a car? Nobody had a car.
yeah,
Do you have heat and lights? Do you have food insecurity? Really? Do you? If you've got food insecurity in this society, you're just not trying very hard.
because guess what? There are multiple schools in my area that I can line up every day, drive my car through, and they will literally put boxes of government food into my car. Because of COVID, they're giving out all the lunch stuff that they would give to kids.
I don't think that's ever going to stop.
What's the incentive?
It may be that schools will no longer be considered educational places. They're going to be considered distribution sources for different social services.
I mean, COVID has shown us what we've.
Which will be fine.
Yeah.
They probably are. They're better at that than they are
at
at
educating.
teaching.
Certainly. I mean, like, my husband and I have said this for a while. Like, their public school is just state-sponsored daycare. It has been that way for a long time. And COVID has shown us that, because guess what? There's a huge fight over reopening the schools versus keeping them closed. And most of the people who want to reopen the schools, the public schools specifically I'm talking about, are people who are like, I have no other choice. I have to go to work. I maybe either have a spouse.
I can't afford daycare. My kids are too ill-behaved in daycare. At least the school has to take my ill-behaved children and watch them for 8 hours and feed them.
Usually 2
so
meals a day.
I want the school open. My property taxes are paying for that school, and damn it, I want them to do their job of watching my kids while I'm at work.
Yeah, I did like that.
Which, that's a shame that's the job of the school.
Of course.
As a teacher, I would resent that. It's like, I went to school to learn how to teach children different subjects.
Yeah.
here I am managing behavior,
Yeah.
dealing with bad attitudes, dealing with parents being demanding and nasty. Who would want to be a teacher?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad job,
Yeah.
really. It pays pretty well.
As Norm
But
Macdonald says, like, Norm Macdonald makes fun of teachers a lot because he's like, listen, both my parents were teachers, and teachers always claim that they're heroes. He's like, first of all, no one who claims that they're a hero is actually a hero. And second of all, he's like, to be a third grade teacher, all you need to do is have a second grade education. And no more than like, or to have to be a third grade teacher, you just have to have a third grade education. And he's like, what, you get all the summers off, you get your nights free. He's like, this is a joke of a job. Anyway, I'm not insulting teachers. If you're a teacher,
we have a lot of teachers in our family background.
Yeah,
we have a
and
lot
I'm not
of
saying it's a bad thing, and not every parent is called to homeschool. I'm not saying that every parent should homeschool just because I do, and I think it's the best for my family. There are plenty of people who make the choice to send their kids to school, and that's the best choice, and that's fine.
I think the education system is all messed up because they got their priorities all wrong. They instead of being prioritized toward providing education, they've got all these other regulations and restrictions that have muddied the waters and have made it almost impossible to be able to teach the kids who are willing to learn in a public school situation. It's really sad. Because I'm sure it's very frustrating for teachers. It's got to be. I know I'm very frustrated. Working in a situation where I'm supposed to be providing psychological therapy for people, and we're working in a place that does not value that. You want to talk about daycare? Prisons are daycare.
Daycare for adults, yeah.
Time out, big time out spot for lots of naughty children, and instead of working for correction, it's oriented toward punishment, which just pisses people off, makes them less likely to be open to taking anything that any of the people, everybody who walks onto that camp is looked at as being somebody who's likely there to humiliate you or judge you or restrain you or potentially abuse you. I walk in there with the intention of helping people, getting to know them, developing a relationship. It's very frustrating, and I know that's very analogous to what teachers go through, what doctors go through, what anybody in the helping professions has to go through, especially with all the regulations that have been placed on it.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say, like, I think there are obviously teachers out there who genuinely just want to teach and help kids, but I think that there are a lot of teachers out there who want to. I'm only talking from my personal experience of going through public school as in high school. There are teachers who genuinely care about you, who want you to learn and care about the material. There are also teachers who never grew up past high school. They still want to be the popular kids in school. They want to bully you. They want to make you feel bad in front of other people. They are literally there to be bullies and to exert their small scope of power over you. And that's why a lot of people hate school, because there are a lot of teachers who maybe they didn't go in that way. Maybe they became jaded because,
it's the same
kids are assholes. Like, let's be real. Kids.
It's the same situation with police, with prison guards, with social workers, with doctors and nurses, with parents. It's people. The problem is people.
Yeah.
People can be jerks, and any institution that has any human institution is going to have a lot of jerky people involved in it.
Yeah.
But the way that it's set up is those people are afforded protections.
Yeah.
I mean, people get all upset about, you know, a priest molests a kid, or a priest, you know, embezzles money or something like that. That stuff happens in governmental, you know, state positions all the time.
It's much more likely that your public school teacher is molesting your child than your priest is molesting your child. And no one likes
Yes.
talking about that. And guess what? There's also, like, yes, the church has messed up and has done a bad job. Not the church, not the entire church, but obviously some.
They've done the same thing that other people have done. They've defended themselves. They've obscured stuff. They've covered it up.
Mhm.
They have not been transparent. They have not been true to their mission of service.
Schools do that much more, though, than churches do. Because guess
They do.
what? They have unions, and teachers, even if they're molesting somebody, cannot be fired. And if you want to, there's a really good documentary. I'll try to remember. Is it maybe Waiting for Superman? I don't know. It's one of the school documentaries. It's really good, where they actually go into one of these, like, I can't even remember what they call it. It's basically a room where the teachers who are, like, disciplined have to go. They're not, it's like you going into work and not being able to actually do work. Like, there are teachers who have to, because they're not allowed to be fired, they're not allowed to work with students because they have done something horrendous that makes them unable to work with students, but they have to just
on
go.
administrative placement.
Yeah, and they have to go and sit in a room and just be there and get paid by the taxpayer every day, because they're not allowed to get fired, but they're also not allowed to work with students. I mean, it's the public sector unions make me sick. We could talk about that for a whole episode.
Private sector unions have the same tendency toward every union is basically intended to provide protections for its members.
But at least
it's a cronyism is what it is.
Yeah. At least in private sector unions, a business can choose whether or not they want to allow their workers to make a union. And also,
that's not always true.
Well, you can, that is true. But in private unions, yeah, it depends on the state. See, this is where the government,
the United Auto Workers and stuff like that. If you tried to get a job in a car plant, without being a member of the United Auto Workers, those auto workers would have such a fit.
Yeah, it depends on the.
It really does depend on the state. Shop.
Yeah.
You cannot get in there unless you are a member of the union. I had a problem similarly. There was a union that was started for this. Well, guess I'm officially kind of a member of a union now. Not really, but there was a union like this in the state where we came from, where you had to be a member of that union. You had to pay dues in order to be able to work at the
place
not when I worked for the religious group, but when I worked for the state group, there was a mandatory union. You had to pay dues.
Let's not get
I objected to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you should, because unions
I said I want to have a contract with my employer, just between me and my employer.
Yeah.
If I'm able to do really good work, I want my employer to be able to value that and pay me more, regardless of my seniority, regardless of whatever.
Yeah.
If I'm not performing my job. I want my employer to be able to fire me at any time. I don't want artificial protections.
You don't
I
want
want to have,
charity.
if I'm of value to my employer, they'll pay me. If I'm not of value to my employer, they won't pay me. I'll find somebody else to pay me.
And this
But
goes
I
back,
don't
yeah.
but I don't need to join this you know what fascism means?
Yeah.
Fascism means a bundle of sticks. A bundle of sticks bound together will be stronger than any single stick.
Yeah.
Right? That's what fascism is, and that's what unions are. It's a bundle of sticks.
Yeah.
Everybody says, hey, if we join together and we collectively do this, we can have more power.
Yeah.
I don't want more power. I want to be of value in the market. That's what I consider legitimate power to be.
Yeah.
If I can provide value to somebody and I can prove that to them, they'll pay me. If they don't pay me, I'll find somebody else to do it, or I'll figure out a way to do it on my own. But I don't need to have this unionized collective power.
Yeah.
That's illegitimate as far as I'm concerned.
And this is
it's as illegitimate as fascism and as communism.
Yeah. And this is what we were getting, like we were talking about this before, about how the progressives just don't have a misunderstanding of like the market. Like this is exactly what we were talking about how goods and services are exchanged for goods and services, and we use a currency in the middle to mediate those things. And
the fact that the market generates disparate outcomes for different people is because people are different. Yeah. People have different skills that are more or less valuable. People have different tolerance for being able to or willing to work, which has more or less value. People who have different abilities to provide services or generate goods, and those are gonna be disparately rewarded by a market that says, hey, it's great that you can screw a screw into a cup. That's not what I need. I need somebody who can develop a COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
If you can develop a COVID vaccine, I got a job for you. If all you can do is screws into cups, I can't help you. I don't know anybody who needs people to do that.
I wanted to give one real life example of why progressivism, when they claim to be all about equality, actually decreases equality for people. This was a real life example that happened this week. And then maybe we can touch on the religious stuff before I have to go here in just a bit. But this week at Georgetown, my husband goes to Georgetown. I think I'm okay to say that. Anyway, my husband goes to Georgetown Law. They got an email this week because there was a scandal that happened in the university, that a recorded Zoom call got leaked or publicized, in which a adjunct professor made comments saying, I hate to say this, but every semester, the lowest students in my class happen to be Black. So she said that comment, and another professor who was on the Zoom call with her didn't even say anything, but kind of was like listening and nodding his head. And they got, that was kind of the upshot of the conversation. And anyway, she got totally fired. She has no
wow.
She has no relationship with the school anymore.
Canceled.
There's the other guy, the guy who was just nodding his head, is on leave and is having an investigation as to whether he can continue his relationship with Georgetown. Now, why do I bring this up in relation to progressivism? law school, this is an uncomfortable topic and people are going to cancel me for even just saying it, whatever. Law schools have
quotas.
Well, they have systems where they give preferential acceptance to minority students, to people who have in the past been disadvantaged. Affirmative action programs.
In order to generate diversity.
Yeah.
It's this, if you go to work at the Veterans Administration and you're a veteran, or at the post office and you're a veteran, you automatically get like an extra 100 points on your rating scale.
Yeah.
They favor veterans.
Yeah.
People favor different things because they want to provide those people with preferential treatment.
And it's twofold.
That is racism.
Yeah.
It is racism.
Yeah.
To provide different treatment for different races.
And the reason they do
it's sexism to provide different treatment for different sexes. Mm-hmm. It's ageism to provide different treatment for different ages.
Because you're only considering somebody based on a characterization of them that is outside of their control, which is wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong to do.
Group identity. Yeah.
And it's like, so affirmative action, there's two reasons for it. First of all, they're trying to correct for past injustices, which like I don't, that, you know, obviously that's a good intention. Like, yeah, we did have a system in this country where Black people were not allowed to go to law school no matter what their ability was. That was wrong. And it is a good thing to try to say we need to take active steps to correct that. Now where it's wrong is where you say, okay, now we're going to have a minimum amount of people that we accept to our law school who are of one ethnic group or another. The point should just be that anyone who has the skills can get in, no matter what you look like, no matter what your gender is, no matter what your age is. Anyone should be able to go if they have the necessary qualifications. The problem is with these affirmative action...
I've always seen justice. I thought justice was blind.
The problem with this affirmative action stuff is that they actually lower the bar for people who are of minority status for whatever reason. Now, what does that result in? It results
the tyranny of lowered expectations.
Tyranny of low expectations. Yeah, the soft bigotry of low expectations, saying, now every employer who hires somebody has to say, I wonder if they got in on their actual merit, or I wonder if they got in because of the color of their skin. Is that fair to those people? Is it fair to I mean, like that?
Is it fair to the other students who could have got in and excelled?
And it just makes me mad because it's like this is racism. This is racism, and not only that, it's creating more racism because now people are noticing like, hey, for some reason, every student in the bottom of my class, or at least a lot of the students in the bottom of my class, are people of color. Like, I wonder what's up with that. And if you say something like that, which is just a statistical truth because of the affirmative action, like because of this affirmative action program, now you get fired because you're not allowed to talk about that. Because even though it's a statistical fact, it is it's a hate fact or whatever.
It's a politically hot
incorrect
topic.
Fact.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's an inconvenient truth.
I say all that to say, like, obviously I'm not a racist. I actually want people of all races to succeed, and I want them to be able to do that. I'm just saying, like, these progressive policies are creating racism, creating exactly the thing that they're designed to stop. And that is another reason, a real life reason that just happened this week, of why these progressive policies actually do the opposite of what they're setting out to do.
The war on racial inequality, the war on poverty, the war on all these different things has always got it wrong. They don't understand what the real reason is for these things.
Trying to make equitable outcomes is not a solution to racial disparities, to gender pay disparities, to any of these things. Like you have to see the actual reason for a lot of these things. Now, in the case of racial disparities, there are some legitimate systemic problems with things, such as like, certain tests being written in certain ways that disadvantage certain people, whatever. Those are things that we actually need to address so that everybody has an equal chance at getting ahead. But that's
not the reason why these law school students are at the bottom of their class.
Yeah. It's because they have a lower standard of getting into school than their fellow classmates.
They're less qualified, and so that it's like if they said, the NFL has to start hiring 60-year-old white guys.
Yeah.
So I get on the team. Guess what? I am not going to perform well.
And no one wants to watch that.
I'm not qualified. Even if they added 500 points to my rating.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be good on the field. I'm an old fat dude, and I can't run well, and I don't tolerate pain. I'm not going to be a great football player.
And the people
it's just not going to happen. You look at the football players, and you see there are certain people who are built for football. Do you see a lot of women out there? No. Do you see a lot of midgets out there? No. Do you see a lot of people with spina bifida? No. Do you see a lot of people with, you don't see a lot of people who have conditions that limit their ability to perform well in that situation. I'm sorry, it's just true. When you were talking, I was thinking about, remember the movie The 300? Did you ever see
Sparta?
that? About Sparta, yeah.
I've never seen it, but like I know it's about
okay,
Sparta.
Yeah. In Sparta was they were pretty severe in their selection for who could join the troops, because you have to be able to rely on the guy next to you to be strong enough and competent. Otherwise, you're going to get killed.
As it should be, by the way, in the military, in the police force, and all those places, they should have high standards for a reason. Continue.
Right. So they had this one guy wanted to be a Spartan soldier so bad, but he was born with like scoliosis. He had like a hunchback, kyphosis, whatever it is.
A hunchback.
He was a hunchback.
That's the
and so he wasn't gonna be he wasn't gonna be able to hold the shield in the right way. That's just how it is. I mean, and if you want a certain number of hunchbacks in your Spartan force, what it's gonna do is ruin your Spartan force.
Yeah.
And that's true in public schools. They don't want anybody to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people who have no interest in succeeding
or no ability.
They don't want them to fail.
Yeah.
And they're obligated to keep everybody there until a certain age, whether they're a pain in the ass or not. Whether they're setting fires in the back of the room, or fondling the fellow students, or stabbing people. We have to provide some sort of educational opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Their educational opportunity is provided to them. If they can't take advantage of that because of certain qualities, that shouldn't be an educational problem. It needs to be some sort of mental health or corrections or whatever problem, but not an educational problem.
Yeah, I have a friend who works.
And that's what has completely eliminated the ability for teachers to teach.
Yeah.
You know, you see that all the time. You never watched The Wire, did you?
No.
It was, I think, it was the third or fourth season of The Wire where they had these kids. They followed these kids through the Baltimore schools, and it was really well done. It really represented the problems that kids come to school with, the problems that the government puts on the schools, the problems that the government has in trying to maintain some kind of standard. And you know, the progressives will say, we don't want any children left behind. We don't want, it's not realistic. Some children need to get left behind.
If they choose to be left behind, they should have the freedom to do so.
Yeah. In order for the kids who are there to learn, we have to let the kids who have no interest in learning go someplace else.
Yeah.
You know, and it's unrealistic to try to put all those people into one group and say, well, that's the only way that we can really make it fair and equitable.
Yeah.
No, it's fair and equitable in that everybody has the same access to the process. Not everybody can take advantage of the process. Yeah. I could try out for the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just savvy enough to realize I'm never going to make the Packers. There's no point in trying out. I could try out for the Lakers. No, I'm not going to be able to take Kobe's place. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and this is like, man, I have a lot more to say about this, but we got to wrap it up soon. The one thing I was going to say is
we got to a good subject.
I know there's a guy named Gad Saad who's a professor in Canada. He's great. He's kind of like a Jordan Peterson-esque kind of, like him and Jordan Peterson have a lot of conversations together, and he's great. He is really against, like, you know, kind of progressive postmodernism, Marxist kind of theories. And he says, like, the appeal of these theories is that they free you from the shackles of reality. Like, in
an ideal world, this is how it would happen. So let's try to create this ideal world. No, let's try to adapt to the world that we have and make it as good as we can.
He says, like, it's not a fun fact to realize that, like, I will never be as strong as my husband. I will never be as good of a football player as any of the people on the Packers. I will never be able to play in the NBA like Michael Jordan. He's like, you know, Gad Saad says he's like a Lebanese Jew, like a short Lebanese Jew who like, he's like, I will never be able to play in the NBA like all the other people. And postmodern Marxism, like those progressive theories say, like, you can be whatever you claim that you are, whatever your truth is, that's what you are. And it's like, that's a great idea, because guess what? It's not fun to realize, like, there are some kids who will just never be able to succeed in school. There are some kids who, because of either their choices or their mental ability, will never be able to work in the workforce. Like, that's not a pleasant thing to think about. That's not a fun thing, but it is true. Like, that's reality.
It's real. Yeah. And to deny it means that you're making yourself vulnerable to the consequences of living a lie, which is always
disintegration.
Bad things are going to happen. It can't be sustained.
Yeah.
Lies can't be sustained. They eventually fall apart.
Yeah. And when you start saying that anybody who wants to be in the NBA can be in the NBA, guess what happens? No one wants to watch the NBA anymore because it's not entertaining to see you and me play a game of basketball because we're not good at it. It's entertaining to watch people who are at the height of their craft play basketball because they are displaying the lengths that humans can go to achieve things. It's not entertaining to watch you and I, who would much rather sit here and have this conversation, play basketball. Anyway,
I wish I could play basketball that well. I have to accept the fact that I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, from now on, Smokey P is actually a sumo wrestler. I'm actually a champion sumo wrestler. I proclaim it as such, therefore it is.
You're just living
It's how
your
I
truth.
feel about me, and so it's my truth.
Yeah.
Who are you to say my truth ain't legit?
I think we've talked a lot about progressivism. I think, should we talk about the religious stuff or should we just end it? I don't know.
Let's end it there, and we'll end up talking more about religious stuff another day.
I have one thing that I wanted to read. I think that it's a good, we were talking about how we have a divided America where we have, people thinking that the other side is the enemy. Mm-hmm. I think that this reflection, I read these reflections from Bishop Barron on the Lenten gospel readings. I read this reflection yesterday and I thought it was actually really good. So the gospel reading from yesterday is Luke 11:14-23. It's about Jesus was driving out a demon. I'll just summarize. Jesus was driving out a demon and some people said, oh, he's doing that like in Satan's name, basically. Like he's working to drive out demons.
He can boss the demons because he's a demon himself.
Yeah, by the power of Beelzebul, the prince of demons, he drives out demons. And he said, every kingdom divided against itself will be laid waste, and house will fall against house. And if Satan is divided against himself, how will his kingdom stand? So basically he's saying, whoever is not with me.
If I'm really in league with the devil, why am I trying to undo their work?
So here's the little reflection that I thought was really good. And this has to do with just seeing each other as enemies versus, once again, like Jordan Peterson says in Beyond Order, working together with people of different kind of temperamental ideas to try to create a better world. So Bishop Barron says, friends, in today's gospel, we learn of a person possessed by a demon. Jesus meets the man and drives out the demon, but then he's immediately accused of being in league with Satan. Some of the witnesses said, by the power of Beelzebul, the prince of demons, he drives out demons. Jesus's response is wonderful. Okay, I already read that part. And the demonic power is always one of scattering. It breaks up communion. But Jesus, as always, is the voice of communio, the one bringing things back together. Think back to Jesus's feeding of the 5,000. Facing a large and hungry crowd, his disciples beg him to dismiss the crowd so that they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus answers, there's no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves. Whatever drives the church apart is an echo of this dismiss the crowd's impulse and a reminder of the demonic tendency to divide. In times of trial and threat, this is a very common instinct. We blame, attack, break up, and disperse. But Jesus is right. There is no need for them to go away. And then the reflection question is, what do you see in the Catholic Church today that is a source of division? What do you see that is a source of communion? And how can you be an agent of communion in your own parish? I think that that's a good question we need to ask ourselves. Like, how am I being an agent of unity instead of an agent of division? Like, I think that's an important thing to ask and to try to figure out. When I was reflecting on this yesterday, I was thinking, like, the sources of separation and division are so easy. They come to mind so easily, like scandals and cover-ups in the church. Obviously, the devil, the world, and the flesh are sources of division. The traditional versus liberal Catholic divisions, which is something that I wanted to talk about today, but we just don't have time. Kind of the COVID issues and how we deal with COVID as a church, how we're going to deal with distributing the sacraments and having a sacramental community, even in a time of COVID. Racial issues, wokeism, leftism, Trumpism, all those things are divisions in the church. But what are sources of unity? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the source of unity because ultimately he is the one who came to save us all. And the Eucharist, a desire for truth, love, and the pursuit of sainthood. Those are the things that need to unite us. And it's like, I think that my job as trying to be a source of unity is not only to make myself be the best that I can be, because I can't fix other people if I can't fix myself. And Jordan Peterson talks about that a little farther on in the book. He talks about how he was counseling a young woman who had a lot of problems. She had no motivation. She spent most of her time just laying in bed because she was kind of depressed. And a lot of the reason she was depressed was because she was like, oh, climate change is tearing the country apart. And I have, like, why can't all these politicians see all this stuff? And he was like, how are you to be telling people what to do when you don't even have the motivation to get out of bed? Like, if you can't get your act together and live your life in a way that like produces some value, you have no leg to stand on to judge other people. It's the same way. If I can't like get my butt in the confessional and receive Jesus and try to be better and pray on my knees every day for the grace to be a better person and closer to sainthood, then I have no leg to stand on, like saying that, talking about division and where things are wrong and how to fix things in the church. I think that I need to be in pursuit of truth, and I need to be really close in my relationship with Jesus. Anyway, that's me preaching there at the end. But I don't know. I do have thoughts on like the progressives versus the conservatives within the church and how that's kind of a problem. But honestly, it's the same. It's like you said, people are people. It's the same issues in the church as they are in the political system and in the world. And I don't know if we really need to get into it any more than that. But I think we need to work to be agents of unity.
Yeah, and I think, to quote the captain in Tennille, love will keep us together. That's what it's always been about, is love keeps us together. Fear, and the devil is big on trying to make people afraid that they're not good enough, make people afraid that they can't trust other people, and that's how he sows division.
Yeah.
Is to focus on the fear. I was just listening to the Bible in a Year podcast the other day. I'm catching up. They were just at the point where they had come out of Egypt. Okay, the Exodus has occurred. Now we're going to go into the promised land. They send 12 people to go check it out. 10 come back and say, I'm afraid we can't do it. And Father Mike says, no, you can't do it. God never said you could do it. He said he'd do it for you.
Yeah.
He said, trust me and I'll do this for you. But they didn't trust, and they gave into fear, and they found all these reasons to reject God's plan. And so they had to spend 40 years in the desert, working things out, dying.
Yeah.
They had to all die.
Yeah.
Because they weren't worthy. They still had too much Egypt in their heart.
Yeah.
They were still too ready to be slaves. And that's still the problem today. There's still so many people who are ready to be slaves. As long as it's easier, it's like, oh, how I wish we were back in the Biden administration with the flesh pots. They would just send me checks and I would be able to eat pork and rice all day.
Yeah.
They had these pork bills that were just stunningly generous. Yeah, it made me a slave. Yeah, it made me dependent. Yeah, it kept me from being my best self. But I don't care. I want the easy button. I want the easy button. I want to be a baby. I don't want to take care of myself. All right. I mean, there's some people that I guess want that,
Well, it's human nature.
And that's always been the attraction. Is
Yeah.
I want the easy way. I want it my way. I want it easy. I don't want to have to work for things. I'd rather be a slave than to have the anxiety of having to rely on myself. And that's really the only two options. You're either a slave or you do it yourself. You're either a slave or you're trying to make somebody else your slave.
And neither of those are fun, but it's reality.
But the present system is set up where it's enslaving the future.
Mm-hmm.
The children of the future are going to have to work to pay our debts. Anybody who has to work to pay for things that I'm using, they're my slave.
Yeah.
You know, if they have to work to do things in order for me to have the lifestyle that I want, they're my slave.
Yeah.
And that's people don't want to look at that.
Yeah.
You know, people want to say, oh, we need to make reparations for slavery. No, we need to eliminate slavery.
The evil of it.
We don't need to create more slavery by making reparations for slavery. We need to eliminate slavery.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. I see
evil.
Parents all the time who have gone through divorce and one thing or another, and they're always saying, you know, I put my kids through a hard time. I was selfish. I did this. I did that. I had an affair. I got involved in drugs. I screwed things up. My kids ended up having to go to foster home, whatever. I feel bad about that. I feel guilty about it. What should I do? How can I make it up to them? You can't make it up to them. You can start loving them now. The problem was you didn't love them enough then.
Mm-hmm.
The solution isn't to overindulge them now and to make things so easy for them now that they're going to be useless as adults going forward.
Yeah.
Give them what they need now. You didn't give them what they needed then. You didn't love them enough to do that. Love them enough to give them what they need now. And if they need a kick in the ass, give them a kick in the ass.
Yeah.
If they need a pat on the back, give them a pat on the back. But do it with love. Do it all with love. Love will keep us together.
It's like that phrase, like the best, if you need an apple tree, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. But the next best time is right now. Like, because you can't go back in the past 20 years ago. And like, damn, it would be nice to have an apple tree right now, but it's better now than never. So, yeah. And it's just funny, the human nature of like wanting to take the easy way out. Like my kids
and wanting to appease our guilt rather than do what it takes to do the hard work of being a good parent now.
Yeah. But even my kids, one of their favorite, and they're only about to turn 2 and about to turn 5. One of their favorite games to play is Baby, because babies have no responsibility. And babies get to sit and cry, and they don't have to do chores. They don't have to be responsible. They don't have to make their bed. So it's like, what's their response when like they don't want to do their chores? Oh, I'm a baby. I can't do anything. It's like, that's human nature. It's human nature to want to just take the easy way out. But it's like, that's not reality, babe. You can't be a baby again. You're not a baby. You're a big kid. And you have responsibility. Anyway, I think we've
go out and get a job, you bum.
That's the goal. But,
all right, we've talked for a long time.
Yeah, we have. I think this was hopefully fruitful, though. I don't know.
You're probably gonna have to edit some of this.
You always say that at the end of every episode, and it's easy for you to say because you're not the one who has to go through and edit it.
That's correct. And generally, I just feel like, you know, we ought to just edit the parts where you were talking and just get to the stuff where I made the good points. That's
we should what I really should do is I should split the audio of the show into like left-right channels, so that if you just want to hear yourself, you just put in one headphone. You don't have.
That's all I have. I don't even need.
You don't even have to take out the other one. Okay. Now we really are just going on.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was informative. Continue.
God bless everybody. Let love rule. Yeah. Love is the law. God is love. And you are called to be loved too. So love.
That will bring you if you're watching.
That will bring unity. Love brings unity. Fear brings division. Don't be afraid. True love casts out all fear.
Amen. All right. Bye, everyone.